wretched noise rung in the air as I stood on the porch of my father's home. At first, I thought it was the dying cries of an animal, but I'd lived in the country since I was a little girl, and I'd never heard anything quite like that. I cocked my head to the right. The sound was coming from the right of my driveway, from the valley the creek ran through. There were screams, shrieks, and wails billowing through the air. It was the voice of a woman. My heart was pounding as I rushed over to see what was going on. Who was on my property, and why did it sound like they were in so much pain? There was a row of trees planted on the precipice of the gorge, and looking between them, I saw the woman. She was floating about 5 feet in the air. She looked young, and yet her skin was wrinkled. She was pale, and her face was contorted into the most infectious expression of horror. Long, thin strands of greasy black hair fanned out in every direction, prickling with a life of its own, and exploded apart by an inanimate wind. She was staring right up at me, and she dragged the fabric of her white dress as she lifted her arm to point. Her jaw distended even further now as a great roar filled the air, pushing nature aside as it went to rattle me from within. I couldn't look away, but in the next instant she was gone, leaving behind only the valley and the creek she floated above. Yeah, that was the first time I saw the Banshee. At the time, I felt deeply threatened and afraid, but now I realized she was only trying to help me. A few weeks after the incident, I realized I was pregnant. It came as a bit of a welcome surprise, but I'd only really been seeing the guy for 6 months, and I felt a bit unsure of the future. That guy, Lou, later became my husband, and he moved into the house shortly after my father passed away. That was a difficult time. I was about 7 months pregnant with our daughter Jill, but Lou was really there for me, and it helped a lot. I knew that I didn't want to go to the hospital to give birth. I've been reading a lot of materials about doing it naturally, and on the day that Jill was born, I recruited Lou to help me with a bit of midwifery. Luckily, the labor only lasted a couple of hours, and I was blessed with my beautiful daughter. I still remember the sun shining onto her face as Lou handed her to me for the first time. I couldn't let go of her as he began cleaning up around me. I couldn't let go of her for hours, and even into the night, as I kept holding her tiny body, pressing her against me. There, in that perfect silence, that was the second time I heard the Banshee. The house rattled as though some mining operation was drilling through its foundation. That same wretched screaming was belting through the air, right through the open window of my second-floor bedroom. I could hear Lou charging up the stairs. "What is it? What's going on?" He sounded terrified, thinking the screaming was mine. I watched the look of shock on his face become confusion as he realized the sound was coming from outside the house. "What is that?" I heard him vocalize under his breath. It was still a bit hard for me to move, but I craned my neck over to look out the window. She was still floating over those same coordinates in the ravine, but her Y-vector had scaled up quite a bit. She now hovered over the tree line, much higher up than even the roof of my house, to make sure that to me she was in plain view. Her screaming sounded so pained and so less controlled than the first time. It really did sound like several animals dying violently at once. She even intermittently barked and gurgled inhumanly before returning to a scream that shattered the window. Lou jumped back and huddled around me instinctively to try to protect me and our daughter. The Banshee's jaw was open so wide it swung like an appendage in the air. Her arms and legs began to twist up like a pretzel. She grasped at her head intermittently from time to time, as though she were trying to console herself of an impossibly devastating loss. And then she vanished, just like the first time. And again, I never knew. I didn't heed her warning. How could I have known? I woke up to sweet little Jill's crying as the summer heat blasted through the open window Lou was trying to repair. No, go back to sleep. Get some rest. I got the baby. No, she's hungry. Lou, bless his heart, trying to be supportive. I peered between his body and the window as Jill fed and stared out into the valley. What was this creature? Why did it have it out for me? I couldn't get it off my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about how it might try to harm my daughter. What did it want from me? At the time, all I could feel was hatred and violence in its heart. A disdain for me, and I believed it. When it screamed at me, I felt a disdain for myself. I did some research that day, and that was when I learned it was a banshee. What I learned is that a banshee's screaming heralds death, and where I saw her, the location she appeared, is where the death was to occur. This terrified me. I forbade Lou from ever going into that ravine. I told him I would do the same, and I made him promise on our lives that Jill would never enter that ravine. And still, this was my childhood home, and I wasn't ready to leave. A year went by. The snow fell and melted and rushed around the house in a great whirling river that by summer had vanished like the banshee. And again she came on Jill's birthday. And again, and again, and again, until Jill was 4 years old. Once Jill was able to move around on her own, I knew better than to stay in that house. We moved down the block to put some distance between us and that ravine. This house had a great yard too, and lots of land. That was important to Lou, and Jill loved playing outdoors. It was a lot better this way. She could play outside all she wanted, and I didn't have to worry. I was never very outdoorsy myself. I'd watch from the window as they made snow angels and built snowmen, igloos, tobogganed down into the old floodplain. I could see Lou's inner child peeking out as Jill was now old enough to play with him. But spring came, and the snow melted, and the two of them got on their rubber boots to play in the mud. And then there came a day when that would end. I was sipping some tea, looking at cute sweaters on Pinterest, and I heard a panic coming from outside. It wasn't the banshee. It was Lou. I had never heard him scream like that before. I got up from the kitchen table and rushed out to the front porch to see Lou sprinting down the yard at full tilt, yelling as he went. I couldn't make out what he was saying, and I wasted no time in trying to put on shoes. He was staring out into the floodplain even as he ran alongside it. I was trying desperately to keep up with him, kicking up mud and messing up my beautiful white sundress. As I made it to the precipice of the floodplain, I realized what was going on. What in the summer was only a trickle had become a massive, raging river in the melt of the snow. And sure enough, as I looked up the way, I saw Jill floating, the cute little pink raincoat I bought her, bobbing up and down desperately. It was alarming just how fast the river carried her, and it felt like a miracle she had stayed at the surface even this long. I knew that Lou was trying to get ahead of her, cut her off so that he could grab her and pull her back, but even sprinting he was barely keeping up. That is, until Jill's cute little raincoat caught on the roots of a tree sticking up out of the water. For a moment, I felt relief, but the back of her raincoat was caught, and Jill was still face down, pulled by the force of the water. Lou didn't hesitate. He dove in, and I cheered him on internally as I waited for him to bob back up and power through the water towards her. I watched from the bank to see his heroism at work. But I never saw Lou again. He was swallowed by the current. I was absolutely beside myself. I rushed down to the edge of the water and dipped my toe in. It nearly knocked me off balance then and there. "Jill!" I cried desperately, and as I gazed across the river to Jill's coat, I realized that it was empty. My daughter was already gone. My daughter's gone. She's gone. And here I am now, just standing here. I know this spot. I know where I am. I don't even have to look around. I know that my childhood home is right behind me, just over the edge of the ravine. I hate myself. I fucking hate myself. This is what the Banshee was trying to warn me of. If only I could go back. If only I could send a message to myself. How stupid I was. How stupid I was. What am I supposed to do now? Where can I go now? Just gonna let this water take me. Just gonna let it seep into my pores. I'm just gonna let it wrinkle my skin, mat my hair, my long black hair. That's what I deserve. This is what I deserve. There she is. That idiot. That young idiot. I'm gonna give her a piece of my mind. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that story. I know that's a bit more intense than I normally go, but they can't all have a happy ending, can they? Gotta keep you on your toes. By the way, just in case you didn't get it, the woman is the Banshee from the future. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, hit the bell, and tune in for next Thursday when there's going to be a brand new original horror story. Also tune in on Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Nightmare Theater, an open book club for nightmares. Until next time, embrace the beautiful dark.